The alarm screams echoed through the massive research facility on Kepler 442b, a sound that made even the most experienced xenobiologists freeze in terror. Dr. Zephyra's four eyes widened as she stared at the security monitors, watching red warning lights flash across every containment level. The impossible was happening. All 12 apex predator species, the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy, were breaking free simultaneously. "This can't be right," she whispered through her translator, her scaled hands trembling as she operated the control panel. "The probability calculations show this is impossible. The containment fields are powered by 3 independent fusion reactors. The backup systems have backups. This should never happen." Behind her, the other senior researchers from various alien species gathered around, their faces showing the universal expression of pure fear. The Galactic Research Consortium had spent decades capturing these apex predators, studying them in the most secure facility ever built. Each creature represented the ultimate evolution of their respective worlds, killing machines that had dominated their ecosystems for millions of years. The Vorthack from Nexus Prime could tear through titanium with their claws. The Shadow Maws from the dark side of Umbral could phase through solid matter. The Crystal Hunters from the Silicon Worlds could shatter molecular bonds with their touch. 12 species, each one capable of wiping out entire colonies if they ever escaped. And now they were all loose. "Where's the human intern?" Dr. Zephyra suddenly asked, her voice sharp with panic. "Marcus, the new one from Earth. He was supposed to be monitoring the lower levels today." The facility's AI responded with its calm, mechanical voice. "Human intern Marcus Chun is currently located in Containment Level 7, moving toward Level 8. His vital signs show elevated but stable readings." Level 7. Dr. Krell, a massive insectoid researcher, clicked his mandibles in disbelief. "That's where we keep the Nightmare Weavers. They've been loose for 15 minutes. You should be dead by now." Dr. Zephyra's hands flew over the controls, bringing up the security cameras for Level 7. What she saw on the screens made her question her own eyesight. The human intern, barely 22 Earth years old and smaller than most of the research staff, was walking calmly through the corridor. Behind him, following like obedient pets, were 3 Nightmare Weavers, creatures that resembled giant spiders crossed with sharks, their bioluminescent stripes pulsing in what the researchers recognized as a contentment pattern. "This is impossible," Dr. Zephyr breathed. "The Nightmare Weavers are Category 5 apex predators. They're supposed to attack anything that moves. They've killed 7 security teams in previous incidents." On the screen, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. The camera's resolution wasn't high enough to make out what it was, but he held it out toward the Nightmare Weavers. The massive creatures, each one the size of a small transport vehicle, lowered their heads and allowed the human to touch them. One actually seemed to be purring, a deep rumbling sound that the researchers had never heard from the species before. "Dr. Zephyra," the AI announced, "I'm receiving communication requests from multiple containment levels. It appears the human intern is attempting to establish contact with facility management." "Put him through," she ordered, her voice barely steady. Marcus's young voice came through the speakers, calm and slightly confused. "Hey, Dr. Zephyra, I know there's supposed to be some kind of emergency going on, but I think there might be a problem with the alarm system. All the containment fields went down, but the animals seem pretty chill. I've got a few of them following me around, and they're acting really friendly." Dr. Krell's compound eyes nearly popped out of his head. "Friendly? Did he just call the apex predators friendly?" "Marcus," Dr. Zephyr spoke carefully, "you need to get to the emergency evacuation point immediately. Those creatures are extremely dangerous." "Oh, these guys." Marcus's voice sounded genuinely surprised. "Nah, they're just big softies. I think they were just scared and lonely in those containment cells. Look, I'm heading down to check on the others. Some of the bigger ones might need help." The communication cut off, leaving the research team staring at each other in stunned silence. On the security monitors, they watched Marcus continue his journey deeper into the facility, now accompanied by 3 nightmare weavers who walked beside him like loyal dogs. This violates every principle of xenobiology we know, Dr. Zephyr muttered. Apex predators don't form social bonds with alien species. They especially don't form bonds with potential prey animals. Dr. Elon, a crystalline being whose species communicated through light patterns, flickered in rapid sequences that translated as extreme confusion. Human behavioral patterns have always been anomalous, but this exceeds all previous observations. We've studied these creatures for decades. They show no capacity for domestication or social bonding outside their own species. The security monitors showed Marcus entering Level 8, where the facility kept the Void Stalkers, creatures from a space between stars that fed on cosmic radiation and could survive in the vacuum of space. These beings were considered so dangerous that they were kept in specialized containment fields that simulated deep space conditions. As the doors opened, the research team expected to see Marcus torn apart by creatures that existed partially outside normal dimensions. Instead, they watched in amazement as 2 Void Stalkers, beings that looked like living shadows with too many angles, approached Marcus slowly. Their form seemed to stabilize around the human, becoming more solid and defined. Marcus reached out his hand, and one of the Void Stalkers gently touched it with what might have been considered a tentacle. They're synchronizing to his dimensional frequency, Dr. Elon observed, his light patterns flickering rapidly. Void Stalkers only do that with their own kind, and only during mating rituals. What exactly is this human doing? Dr. Krell demanded. What kind of training does Earth give their researchers? Dr. Zephyra pulled up Marcus's file on her workstation. According to his records, he has a standard xenobiology degree from Earth University. His specialization is listed as animal behavior and psychology. His previous experience includes working at something called a zoo and volunteering at animal shelters. What's a zoo? Dr. Krell asked. According to the Earth Cultural Database, it's a facility where humans keep animals for observation and education. They allow direct contact between humans and various species. Dr. Zephyr paused, reading further. It says here that humans have a long history of domesticating wild animals and forming emotional bonds with them. The implications of this hit the research team like a supernova. Every species in the Galactic Consortium had evolved past the need to domesticate other creatures. They used technology for all their needs. The concept of forming emotional bonds with non-sapient life forms was considered primitive and inefficient. On the monitors, Marcus had reached Level 9, where they kept the plasma WRMS, creatures from the core of gas giants that existed as living energy. These beings could incinerate anything they touched, and were contained using magnetic fields that cost more energy than most planets produced in a year. As Marcus approached their containment area, the research team prepared for the worst. The plasma WRMS emerged as brilliant streams of living lightning, their forms crackling with enough energy to power a small city. They circled around Marcus, who stood perfectly still in the center of their display. Then, impossibly, the energy beings began to dim their intensity, their crackling forms becoming softer, almost gentle. He's making them comfortable, Dr. Zephyr realized. Somehow, he's communicating with them on an emotional level. Marcus's voice came through the communications again. Dr. Zephyr, I think I know what happened with the containment system. These guys aren't aggressive predators. They're just really intelligent animals that have been kept in isolation for too long. They're showing classic signs of psychological distress from captivity. Psychological distress? Dr. Krell's mandibles clicked in disbelief. They're apex predators, not pets. That's where you're wrong, Marcus replied, somehow managing to sound both respectful and confident. Every animal, no matter how dangerous, has basic emotional needs. These creatures are incredibly intelligent. Keeping them isolated in sterile containment fields is like psychological torture for them. They need social interaction, mental stimulation, and environmental enrichment. The research team exchanged glances. The concept of apex predators having emotional needs was revolutionary. It went against everything they thought they knew about these creatures. Marcus, Dr. Zephyra said carefully, "Can you explain what you mean by environmental enrichment?" "Sure thing, document." Back on Earth, we learned that intelligent animals need more than just food and shelter. They need things to do, problems to solve, social interaction. When animals are bored or lonely, they often become aggressive or depressed. I think that's what happened here. These creatures broke out because they were trying to find stimulation and companionship. On level 10, Marcus encountered the Quantum Hunters, beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously and were known for their ability to predict and counter any attack before it happened. These creatures had never been successfully contained for more than a few hours, as they could simply phase into alternate dimensions to escape. The research team watched in fascination as the Quantum Hunters materialized around Marcus, their shifting forms creating a kaleidoscope of possible realities. Instead of attacking or fleeing, they seemed to be studying him with the same curiosity he was showing them. Marcus pulled out a small device from his pocket, something the researchers recognized as a puzzle toy from Earth. He demonstrated how it worked, showing the Quantum Hunters how the pieces fit together and moved apart. The interdimensional beings watched with what appeared to be intense interest, their forms stabilizing as they focused on the puzzle. "Incredible," Dr. Elon flickered. "He's providing them with mental stimulation." The Quantum Hunters are actually engaging with the puzzle across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "This changes everything," Dr. Zephyra whispered. "If these creatures can be managed through environmental psychology rather than force, our entire understanding of apex predator behavior needs to be rewritten." Marcus continued deeper into the facility, now accompanied by a growing parade of supposedly deadly creatures. The Nightmare Weavers had been joined by the Void Stalkers, who seemed to enjoy the company of the bioluminescent spider sharks. The Plasma WRMS hovered nearby, their energy forms dancing in patterns that resembled play behavior. The Quantum Hunters phased in and out of reality, occasionally solidifying to interact with the puzzle toy Marcus had given them. "Dr. Zephyra," Marcus called through the communicator, "I'm approaching the maximum security levels now. Just wanted to let you know that everyone up here is doing great. I think once we get some proper enrichment programs set up, these guys are going to be much happier." Level 11 housed the most dangerous creature in the facility, a single entropy beast, a being from the heat death of the universe that could unmake matter at the molecular level. It had been contained using technology that the consortium had spent centuries developing, creating a pocket of reverse time to keep it stable. As Marcus approached the containment area, the research team held their breath. The entropy beast was beyond classification, a creature that existed at the end of all things and had somehow been pulled into their reality. If it became agitated, it could theoretically unmake the entire facility. The temporal containment field was down, and the entropy beast sat in the center of its chamber like a living shadow that seemed to absorb light itself. As Marcus entered the room, the creature turned toward him, and reality seemed to flicker around its presence. "Hey there, big guy," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying clearly through the monitoring system. "You must be feeling pretty confused right now. This isn't your time, is it?" The entropy beast remained motionless, but the distortions around it seemed to lessen slightly. Marcus slowly sat down on the floor, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. "I bet you miss home. All the other creatures here, they miss their homes too. But maybe we can make this place a little bit better for everyone." He reached into his backpack and pulled out what appeared to be a small terrarium, complete with miniature plants and a tiny ecosystem. He placed it on the ground between himself and the entropy beast. "This is called a garden," Marcus explained. "It's life creating more life, the opposite of entropy. I thought you might like to see something different for a change." The entropy beast leaned forward, its form becoming more defined as it examined the terrarium. For a moment, the temperature distortions around it stabilized, and the research team could see its true form. Something beautiful and terrible, like a living constellation from a universe that had already ended. Remarkable, Dr. Zephyr breathed. He's giving it something to observe that represents the opposite of its nature. It's like providing a philosophical enrichment. On level 12, the deepest and most secure level of the facility, Marcus faced his greatest challenge. This level housed the Overmind Collective, a hive mind species that had consumed entire star systems before being captured. The collective existed as millions of small organisms that could merge into larger forms, thinking and acting as one terrifying entity. As Marcus entered the vast chamber, the collective had already formed into its war configuration, a massive, writhing mass of tentacles, claws, and sensory organs that towered 50 feet above the floor. Its psychic emanations were so powerful that they could drive most sapient beings insane just from proximity. The research team expected Marcus to be overwhelmed immediately, his mind torn apart by the collective's mental assault. Instead, they watched as the human approached the creature with the same calm confidence he had shown all the others. "I know you're angry," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "You've been separated from your homeworld, cut off from your natural environment. But you don't have to be alone." He gestured to the parade of creatures that had followed him through the facility. The Nightmare Weavers, Void Stalkers, Plasma WRMS, Quantum Hunters, and all the others arranged themselves around the chamber, not in attack formation, but in what appeared to be a social grouping. "These guys were lonely too," Marcus continued. "But now they have each other. You can be part of this group if you want. Not as a leader or conqueror, but as a friend." The Overmind Collective's massive form began to shift and change. The war configuration dissolved, and the millions of small organisms began to arrange themselves in new patterns. Some formed into smaller, less threatening shapes, while others created intricate geometric designs that pulsed with bioluminescent colors. The psychic emanations changed from aggressive dominance to something else entirely: curiosity, loneliness, and a desperate desire for connection. Marcus walked closer to the collective, and one of its smaller forms reached out to touch his hand. The contact was gentle, almost hesitant, like a child reaching out to a parent. "That's right," Marcus said softly. "We're all just trying to find our place in the universe. There's no reason we can't help each other do that." In the observation center, the research team sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about apex predator behavior, about containment protocols, about the fundamental nature of these creatures, had been turned upside down in the span of a few hours. Dr. Zephyra finally found her voice. "How did a human intern accomplish what our best researchers couldn't do in decades?" Dr. Krell's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps the question isn't how he did it, but why we never thought to try his approach. The human species appears to have evolved a unique capacity for interspecies bonding," Dr. Elan observed. "While we developed technology to solve our problems, they developed empathy. On the security monitors, they could see Marcus sitting in the center of the vast chamber, surrounded by the 12 most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. The Nightmare Weavers curled up like massive cats. The Plasma WIRMS danced in slow, beautiful patterns. The Quantum Hunters phased in and out of reality while playing with puzzle toys. The Entropy Beast sat quietly, contemplating the tiny terrarium. And the Overmind Collective had arranged itself into a series of comfortable shapes, its psychic emanations now broadcasting contentment instead of rage. "So, Marcus's voice came through the communicator one final time. When do you want to start setting up the new habitat zones? I've got some ideas about how we can make this place a lot more comfortable for everyone." Dr. Zephyra looked around at her colleagues, seeing the same realization in all their faces. The human hadn't just prevented a catastrophic containment breach. He had revolutionized their entire understanding of how to interact with the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. "Marcus," she said into the communicator, "I think we need to discuss a promotion." 3 weeks after the containment breach that had shocked the Galactic Research Consortium, Marcus Chun found himself sitting in the largest conference room on Kepler, 442b, facing a tribunal of the most distinguished xenobiologists in known space. What had started as an emergency disciplinary hearing had evolved into something unprecedented. The first complete revision of apex predator research protocols in galactic history. Dr. Zephyra shuffled through her data tablets, still struggling to process the reports that had been flooding in from research facilities across the galaxy. Each facility that had implemented what was now being called the Chun Protocol was reporting similar results. Apex predators, previously thought impossible to study, were now cooperative, even friendly, when their psychological needs were addressed. The results from the Andromeda Station are particularly fascinating, Dr. Elon announced, his crystalline form flickering with excited light patterns. They've successfully implemented social groupings for their shadow stalker population. Creatures that have killed hundreds of researchers over the past decade are now participating in collaborative puzzle-solving exercises. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair, still feeling out of place among the galaxy's top scientists. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple intern, excited just to be working off-world. Now, he was being hailed as the architect of a revolutionary new approach to xenobiology. I still don't understand why everyone's so surprised, Marcus said, his Earth accent standing out among the various translator voices. Back home, we figured out thousands of years ago that animals respond better to kindness than fear. Even our most dangerous predators can be managed through proper care and understanding. Dr. Krell, the massive insectoid researcher, clicked his mandibles in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of laughter. Your species continues to astound us, young human. While we were developing more sophisticated containment technologies, you were developing more sophisticated emotional intelligence. The conference room's main screen activated, showing a live feed from the newly redesigned research facility. What had once been sterile containment cells were now sprawling habitat zones, each designed to meet the specific environmental and psychological needs of their inhabitants. The transformation had been remarkable, but what truly amazed the researchers was how quickly the apex predators had adapted to their new circumstances. In Habitat Zone 7, the 3 nightmare weavers that had first encountered Marcus were now part of a complex social structure. They had built intricate web patterns that served no hunting purpose, but seemed to be purely artistic in nature. Dr. Melissa Reeves, a human ethologist who had been rushed to the facility from Earth, was studying their behavior patterns with growing excitement. The creative behavior we're observing goes far beyond anything we expected from these species, Dr. Reeves explained through the communication system. The nightmare weavers aren't just making functional webs anymore. They're creating what can only be described as sculptures. Some of their patterns are so beautiful that we're considering putting them on display in the consortium's art galleries. Marcus grinned, remembering how the first nightmare weaver had seemed to enjoy the simple act of being pet behind its sensory organs. That doesn't surprise me at all. Intelligent creatures need creative outlets. When you give them a chance to express themselves, they usually exceed your expectations. The screen shifted to show Habitat Zone 10, where the quantum hunters had established what the researchers were calling a multidimensional playground. The beings phased in and out of reality, creating complex patterns that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They had been provided with a variety of puzzle toys and problem-solving challenges, each one designed to stimulate their unique cognitive abilities. Dr. Patricia Wong, another Earth scientist who specialized in animal cognition, appeared on the screen, standing safely among the quantum hunters. What we're seeing here challenges our fundamental understanding of consciousness and intelligence, she reported. These beings aren't just solving puzzles across dimensions, they're creating new types of puzzles for each other. They've developed what appears to be a form of recreational mathematics. Recreational mathematics? Dr. Krell asked, his compound eyes focusing intently on the screen. They're playing with mathematical concepts for fun, Marcus explained. It's like humans playing games or doing crossword puzzles. They enjoy the mental challenge, even when there's no survival benefit. The implications of this discovery were staggering. For decades, the galactic scientific community had assumed that apex predators were driven purely by survival instincts. The idea that they could engage in recreational activities purely for enjoyment was revolutionary. Dr. Zephyra brought up another report on her data tablet. The most remarkable changes have been observed in the Overmind Collective. Since we established the group social dynamic you suggested, they've begun exhibiting completely new behaviors. The screen showed Habitat Zone 12, where the Overmind Collective had transformed its living space into something that resembled a vast organic city. The millions of small organisms that made up the collective had arranged themselves into structures that served various functions. Some were clearly living spaces, others appeared to be workshops or laboratories, and some seemed to exist purely for aesthetic purposes. They've stopped trying to consume or dominate the other species, Dr. Zephyra continued. Instead, they're collaborating with them. Look at this. The camera zoomed in on a section of the habitat where small portions of the collective were working alongside several nightmare weavers to create hybrid structures that combine the collective's organic architecture with the weaver's artistic web patterns. The result was breathtakingly beautiful, resembling living art that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. They're sharing knowledge, Marcus realized, watching the creatures work together. The collective has millions of years of experience with organic construction, and the Nightmare Weavers have incredible artistic sensibilities. Together, they're creating something neither could make alone. Dr. Elon's light patterns flickered rapidly with excitement. We're observing the emergence of the first truly interspecies artistic collaboration in recorded galactic history. The cultural implications are enormous. The tribunal members exchanged glances. When they had first called this meeting, they had expected to discuss containment improvements and safety protocols. Instead, they were witnessing the birth of a new era in interspecies relations. Marcus, Dr. Zephyra said carefully, "We've received communication from the Galactic Council. They want to discuss implementing your protocols on a much larger scale." "How much larger?" Marcus asked. "Galaxy-wide," Dr. Krell replied. "Every research facility, every conservation project, every first contact scenario. The Council believes that your approach could revolutionize how we interact with all non-sapient species." Marcus felt a wave of nervousness wash over him. When he had applied for the internship program, he had just wanted to learn more about alien life. He had never imagined that his background working with Earth animals would have such far-reaching implications. "I'm honored," he said finally, "but I think there might be a misunderstanding. I didn't invent anything new. Humans have been using these techniques for thousands of years. Any animal care specialist from Earth could have done what I did." The alien researchers stared at him in silence. Dr. Elon's crystalline form went completely dark for several seconds before flickering back to life. "Marcus," Dr. Zephyra said slowly, "are you telling us that Earth has an entire population of beings capable of forming emotional bonds with dangerous alien species?" "Well, not just dangerous species," Marcus replied, not quite understanding why everyone looked so stunned. "We bond with pretty much any animal we encounter. Cats, dogs, horses, elephants, whales, even some humans keep venomous snakes and large predators as companions. It's just something humans do." The implications of this statement hit the tribunal like a thunderbolt. Earth wasn't just home to one unusually gifted individual. It was an entire planet full of beings with a natural ability to form interspecies bonds. "The question," Dr. Krell said slowly, "is whether Earth would be willing to share this knowledge with the rest of the galaxy." Before Marcus could answer, the communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Dr. Zephyra activated the receiver, and the image of Admiral Vex, head of Galactic Defense, appeared on the screen. The massive reptilian being looked unusually agitated. "Dr. Zephyra, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The research station on Zerion Prime has gone silent. Their last transmission reported that their apex predator specimens had broken containment. A rescue fleet is being assembled, but based on what those creatures are capable of, we don't expect to find any survivors. Marcus stood up from his chair. Admiral, what species were they studying on Zirian Prime? Admiral Vex's scales darkened with worry. Void hunters from the deep space nebulae, phase serpents from the dimensional barriers, and 3 specimens of the most dangerous creature we've ever encountered. Stellar devourers that feed on the energy of stars themselves. The conference room fell silent. Stellar devourers were legendary creatures that existed in the vacuum of space, being so massive and dangerous that most species considered them mythological. The fact that the Zirian Prime Station had been studying 3 of them was classified information at the highest levels. Admiral, Marcus said, surprising everyone in the room with the confidence in his voice. How quickly can we get to Zirian Prime? Marcus, Dr. Zephyra interrupted. What you accomplished here was remarkable, but stellar devourers are beyond anything we've encountered. They're creatures the size of small moons that can consume entire solar systems. With respect, Dr. Zephyra, Marcus replied, size doesn't change the fundamental principles. If they're intelligent creatures that have been kept in isolation, they're probably exhibiting the same stress behaviors as the species here. They're just doing it on a much larger scale. Admiral Vex leaned forward on the screen. Are you suggesting that we attempt to apply your protocols to creatures capable of destroying planets? I'm suggesting that destruction might not be their goal, Marcus said. When animals are scared, confused, or lonely, they sometimes act aggressively because it's the only way they know how to communicate their distress. If these stellar devourers have broken containment, they might just be trying to find their way home. The alien researchers exchanged glances. The logic was sound, but the risks were enormous. If Marcus was wrong, an entire star system could be destroyed. If he was right, they might be able to establish peaceful contact with some of the most powerful beings in the universe. There is one complication, Admiral Vex added. Our long-range sensors have detected the stellar devourers moving toward inhabited systems. If they continue on their current trajectory, they'll reach the Centauri colonies within 72 hours. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Millions of lives hung in the balance, and everyone was looking to him for answers. He thought about the Overmind Collective, how it had transformed from a world-destroying threat into a collaborative artist. He thought about the Nightmare Weavers, who had gone from killing machines to gentle giants who enjoyed being petted. Admiral, he said finally, I'll need a ship equipped with long-range communication systems and a fabrication unit capable of creating large-scale environmental enrichment items. And I'll need Dr. Reeves and Dr. Wong to accompany me. If we're going to communicate with creatures that big, we'll need experts who understand both animal behavior and interspecies psychology. You realize, Admiral Vex said gravely, that if this fails, the defense fleet will have no choice but to attempt to destroy the stellar devourers. The weapons required for that would likely damage several star systems in the process. It won't fail, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. These creatures aren't monsters. They're just animals that need help finding their way home. 3 hours later, Marcus found himself aboard the fastest ship in the Galactic Fleet, racing toward the outer rim and what could either be the greatest breakthrough in interspecies relations or the most catastrophic disaster in galactic history. As he looked out at the stars rushing past, he couldn't help but think about his grandmother's old farm, where he had first learned that even the most dangerous animals could become gentle friends with patience, understanding, and kindness. The Nightmare Weavers back at the facility had taught him that size and fearsome appearance didn't determine behavior. The Quantum Hunters had shown him that intelligence could take forms beyond imagination. The Overmind Collective had demonstrated that even creatures designed for conquest could choose cooperation instead. Now he was about to test whether those same principles could work with beings whose very existence was measured on astronomical scales. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Marcus began planning how to build a petting zoo large enough for creatures that could swallow planets. The emergency command ship Harmonic Convergence dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zirian system, and Marcus immediately understood why the Galactic Defense Fleet was terrified. Through the massive viewport, Three stellar devourers moved through space like living asteroids, each one roughly the size of Earth's moon. Their bodies pulsed with the absorbed energy of consumed stars, creating aurora-like displays that painted the surrounding void in impossible colors. "Magnificent," Dr. Reeves whispered, pressing her face against the observation window. "Look at the electromagnetic patterns they're generating. It's like they're communicating with the cosmic background radiation itself." Dr. Wong was already analyzing the sensor readings on her portable workstation. The energy signatures suggest they're not randomly destructive. There's a pattern to their movement, almost like they're searching for something. Admiral Vex's massive form dominated the command center, his scales shifting through worried color patterns as he studied the tactical displays. "The defense fleet maintains position at minimum safe distance. If those creatures detect our presence and decide we're a threat, we won't have time to escape." Marcus studied the stellar devourers through binoculars, noting their behavior patterns. Unlike the confined apex predators back at the research facility, these beings moved with purpose and coordination. They weren't rampaging through space, destroying everything in their path. They were exploring, investigating, almost like lost children try to find their way home. "Admiral, what was the Xerion Prime Station actually doing with these creatures?" Marcus asked. "I need to understand their psychological state before we make contact." Admiral Vex hesitated before answering. The station was attempting to harness their stellar consumption abilities for energy production. They had constructed containment fields around artificial microstars and were trying to train the Devourers to feed on command. "Train them?" Dr. Reeves looked horrified. "You mean they were trying to turn these magnificent beings into living power generators?" "The galaxy's energy needs are enormous," Admiral Vex defended. "If we could have domesticated them for controlled stellar consumption, it would have solved energy shortages across 100 systems." Marcus felt a familiar anger rising in his chest, the same feeling he had experienced during his veterinary training when he encountered animals that had been mistreated by humans who saw them only as resources. They weren't trying to understand these creatures at all. They were trying to exploit them. The ship's communication officer, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian, turned from her station with urgency. "Sir, we're receiving massive electromagnetic pulses from the stellar devourers. The pattern suggests they're attempting to communicate." "With us?" Admiral Vex asked. "No, sir. With each other. And the signals are being directed toward the galactic core." Marcus immediately understood the implications. They're calling for help. These three escaped, and now they're trying to contact their home population to warn them about what happened. Dr. Wong's instruments were picking up increasingly complex signal patterns. The mathematical structure of their communications is incredibly sophisticated. They're not just sending simple distress calls. They're transmitting detailed information about their experiences. "What kind of information?" Admiral Vex demanded. "If I had to guess based on the signal patterns," Dr. Wong replied, "they're describing the research station, the confinement procedures, and probably the location of other galactic consortium facilities." The horrible truth of the situation hit everyone simultaneously. The stellar devourers weren't lost or confused. They were intelligence agents, gathering information about a species that had attempted to enslave them. If their communications reached others of their kind, the galaxy could be facing a war against beings capable of devouring entire star systems. "Admiral," Marcus said urgently, "we need to establish communication immediately. Not to capture them or control them, but to apologize and negotiate." "Apologize?" Admiral Vex's scales flushed dark red. "To creatures that could destroy our civilization?" "Especially to creatures that could destroy our civilization," Marcus replied. "Look at their behavior patterns. They're not attacking randomly. They haven't destroyed any inhabited planets. They're being remarkably restrained for beings with their power. That suggests they're hoping for peaceful resolution." Dr. Reeves was studying the stellar devourers' movements through her specialized equipment. Marcus is right. Their energy expenditure patterns suggest they're deliberately avoiding inhabited systems. They could have consumed the Centauri colony star by now, but They're maintaining a careful distance. The question is, Dr. Wong added, how do we communicate with beings that exist on such a massive scale? Our standard translation protocols aren't designed for creatures that communicate through stellar electromagnetic manipulation. Marcus was already working on his tablet, pulling up the environmental enrichment designs he had created for the facility's apex predators. We need to think bigger, much bigger. If these creatures feed on stellar energy and communicate through electromagnetic patterns, then we need to create the largest enrichment display in galactic history. What do you have in mind? Admiral Vex asked. We're going to build them a gift, Marcus replied. Something that shows we understand their nature and respect their intelligence. Dr. Wong, can this ship's fabrication systems create large-scale holographic projectors? The ship carries industrial fabricators for emergency station construction, the Altarian communication officer reported. We could potentially create projectors large enough to be visible across several light minutes. Perfect. Admiral, I need you to order the defense fleet to begin creating a specific formation pattern around an uninhabited star system. We're going to construct the galaxy's first interstellar petting zoo. Admiral Vex's expression suggested he thought Marcus had lost his mind, but Dr. Reeves and Dr. Wong immediately understood the concept. Brilliant, Dr. Reeves said. We create an environment designed specifically for their psychological and physical needs. Show them that we can be caretakers rather than captors. The holographic projectors can simulate the electromagnetic patterns of their natural habitat, Dr. Wong added. Create a space where they can express their natural behaviors without fear of exploitation. Over the next 18 hours, the most unusual construction project in galactic history took place. The defense fleet, under Marcus's direction, positioned themselves around an uninhabited red dwarf star. Massive holographic projectors were deployed at strategic points, creating what appeared to be a three-dimensional playground designed for beings the size of moons. The holographic environment simulated the electromagnetic fields found in stellar nurseries, the birthplaces of stars where stellar devourers naturally lived and fed. Artificial aurora patterns danced through space, creating beautiful displays that served both as communication media and entertainment. Gravitational field generators created safe zones where the creatures could rest without worrying about accidentally consuming nearby objects. But the centerpiece of Marcus's design was something unprecedented, a massive holographic construct that told the story of human relationships with animals throughout Earth's history. The display showed early humans befriending wolves, domesticating horses, caring for injured wildlife, and creating sanctuaries for endangered species. The goal, Marcus explained to Admiral Vex as they watched the final preparations, is to show them that humans understand the concept of interspecies cooperation. We're not just another predatory species trying to exploit them. We're potential partners who have a long history of caring for other living beings. The moment the holographic environment activated, the three stellar devourers immediately changed their behavior patterns. Their movement became more purposeful, and their electromagnetic communications shifted to frequencies that suggested intense interest. They're approaching, the communication officer reported. All three are moving toward the display area. Through the observation deck, Marcus watched as the first stellar devourer entered the holographic environment. The creature, roughly 8,000 kilometers in diameter, moved with surprising grace as it investigated the artificial aurora patterns. Its body pulsed with absorbed stellar energy, creating cascading light shows that synchronized with the holographic displays. It's beautiful, Dr. Reeves whispered. Look how its bioluminescent patterns are responding to the artificial stimuli. It's like watching a cosmic dance. The second and third stellar devourers joined the first, and their behavior became increasingly playful. They began creating their own electromagnetic patterns in response to the holographic displays, adding layers of complexity to the artificial aurora. It was clear that they were not only enjoying the environment, but actively participating in its creation. Admiral, Dr. Wong called from her workstation, I'm detecting structured communication patterns between the devourers and the holographic system. They're trying to communicate with us through the display medium. What are they saying? Admiral Vex asked. Marcus was already moving toward the communication station. Let me try something. Can we modify the holographic projectors to respond to their input? Create a two-way communication system using electromagnetic patterns. The Altarian officer's fingers flew over her controls. Theoretically possible. The projectors can be set to reactive mode, allowing them to modify the displays based on external electromagnetic input. Do it, Marcus ordered, then caught himself. Admiral, I recommend we attempt two-way communication for the holographic medium. Admiral Vex nodded his approval, and the communication officer activated the reactive protocols. Immediately, the holographic environment began changing in response to the stellar devourer's electromagnetic emissions. The aurora patterns became more complex, forming geometric shapes and mathematical sequences that clearly indicated intelligent communication. Dr. Wong was frantically analyzing the incoming data. They're teaching us their language. Look at these pattern sequences. They're showing us how their electromagnetic communication system works. The largest of the three stellar devourers moved closer to the observation ship, its massive form creating gravitational distortions that made the hull creak ominously. But instead of threatening behavior, the creature began generating gentle electromagnetic pulses that painted beautiful patterns across the ship's sensors. I think it's trying to say hello, Marcus realized. Dr. Wong, can we respond using the same pattern structure? Already working on it, she replied, her hands dancing across her controls, transmitting basic mathematical sequences to establish communication baseline. The response was immediate and dramatic. All three stellar devourers began generating synchronized electromagnetic displays that lit up the entire star system. The patterns were so beautiful and complex that they resembled living art painted across the cosmos itself. Incredible, Dr. Reeves breathed. They're not just communicating with us. They're sharing their aesthetic sense. This is their equivalent of music and poetry combined. Admiral Vex watched the displays with growing amazement. In all my years of military service, I've never seen anything so beautiful. These creatures aren't destroyers. They're artists. Marcus felt the familiar satisfaction he had experienced when successfully rehabilitating traumatized animals back on Earth. They were never destroyers, Admiral. They were just prisoners who wanted to go home. All we had to do was listen to what they were trying to tell us. The communication session continued for several hours, with both sides learning to understand each other's methods of expression. The stellar devourers shared information about their species, their culture, and their natural habitat in the galactic core. They explained that they were explorers and artists, beings who traveled between stars to experience different electromagnetic environments and create cosmic-scale artistic displays. In return, the human team shared information about the Galactic Consortium, Earth's history of animal conservation, and Marcus's work with the apex predators. The stellar devourers seemed particularly interested in the concept of interspecies cooperation and the idea of creating protected habitats for different forms of life. As the day progressed, it became clear that a remarkable transformation was taking place. What had begun as a potential interstellar crisis was evolving into the first peaceful first contact between the Galactic Consortium and a truly cosmic-scale intelligence. Admiral, Marcus said as the communication session wound down, I think these beings want to establish formal diplomatic relations. They're not interested in war or conquest. They want to be partners in exploring and protecting the galaxy's diverse life forms. That's all well and good, Admiral Vex replied. But what about the other members of their species? The ones they were communicating with earlier? As if in response to his question, the ship's sensors detected massive electromagnetic disturbances at the edge of the star system. Through the viewports, they could see the impossible sight of dozens of new stellar devourers emerging from hyperspace, each one larger and more magnificently decorated than the three they had been communicating with. It's a delegation, Dr. Reeves realized with excitement. They called their leaders to negotiate a formal agreement. Marcus smiled as he watched the cosmic giants arrange themselves in what appeared to be a diplomatic formation around the artificial habitat. Looks like we're about to have the first interstellar diplomatic summit in galactic history. Good thing we brought the big holographic projectors. 6 months after the first interstellar diplomatic summit, Marcus Chin stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Harmony Station, watching something that would have been unthinkable a year ago. In the space around the station, creatures that had once been considered the most dangerous beings in the galaxy were living together in peaceful coexistence. The 3 original stellar devourers had become permanent residents of the system, creating spectacular aurora displays that served as both art and communication. They had been joined by representatives from dozens of other apex predator species, all living in specially designed habitat zones that met their unique physical and psychological needs. The morning feeding display never gets old, Dar. Reeves commented, joining Marcus at the viewport. She was now Director of Interspecies Relations, a position that hadn't existed before Marcus's intervention. Outside, one of the stellar devourers was demonstrating controlled stellar consumption for a group of visiting plasma WIRMS. The massive creature approached a specially constructed artificial star, no larger than necessary, and began to feed in slow, graceful motions that created cascading energy patterns throughout the surrounding space. The plasma WIRMS danced through the energy waves, their own forms sparkling like living fireworks. It's educational feeding, Marcus observed. They're teaching the younger creatures about responsible energy consumption. The stellar devourers have become mentors for species that share similar energy-based biology. Dr. Wong approached from the research section, carrying a tablet full of data. The behavioral studies continue to exceed all expectations. We're documenting forms of interspecies cooperation that we never thought possible. The Quantum Hunters are collaborating with the Overmind Collective on multidimensional art projects. The Nightmare Weavers are teaching web construction techniques to species from 12 different star systems. The station itself had grown into something resembling a massive orbital city, with different sections designed for different environmental needs. Some areas simulated the high-energy environments preferred by stellar creatures, while others recreated the dark matter conditions favored by void-dwelling species. At the center of it all was the human quarter, where Marcus and the growing team of Earth specialists coordinated the complex social dynamics of their interstellar community. Marcus, Admiral Vex's voice came through the communication system. The Galactic Council is requesting another status report. They're still having difficulty believing the transformation we've achieved here. Marcus smiled as he activated the response system. Tell them to come see for themselves, Admiral. We're always happy to give tours. The transformation of Admiral Vex himself had been one of the most remarkable changes of the past 6 months. The massive reptilian warrior had evolved from a military commander focused on containment and control to an enthusiastic advocate for Marcus's interspecies cooperation protocols. He now served as the station's director of security, a position that involved far more mediation than enforcement. The afternoon enrichment programs are starting soon, Dr. Reeves announced. Marcus, the new arrivals are asking for you specifically. Marcus made his way through the station's corridors, passing observation windows that looked out on habitat zones containing creatures from across the galaxy. In one section, a group of recently arrived crystal hunters from the Magellanic Clouds were learning to play three-dimensional chess with some of the Quantum Hunters. The game took place across multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating geometric patterns that shifted through reality in ways that made Marcus's head hurt to contemplate. In another zone, several young Void Stalkers were being taught basic social interaction by the original 3 that Marcus had first encountered during the containment breach. The older creatures had become natural teachers, helping newly rescued apex predators adapt to life in a social community rather than solitary confinement. The new arrivals were waiting in Habitat Zone 15, and Marcus immediately understood why they had requested him specifically. These were temporal hunters from the time streams beyond normal space, creatures that existed partially outside linear time and have been captured by researchers trying to study temporal mechanics. "Hello, friends," Marcus said softly as he entered their environmental chamber. The temporal hunters manifested as shifting, translucent forms that seemed to flicker between different moments in time. "I know this must be confusing for you. You're probably seeing multiple possible timelines simultaneously." The largest of the temporal hunters stabilized slightly, its form becoming more solid as it focused on the present moment. When it spoke, its voice seemed to echo from different points in time, creating a strange harmonic effect. "Human Marcus Chun," it said, "we have observed your timeline across multiple probability streams. In 97% of possible futures, your intervention leads to unprecedented interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. We wish to contribute to this outcome." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. These creatures could literally see the future, and they were choosing to participate in the community he was helping to build. "What did you see in the other 3%? He asked. "Futures where fear overcomes understanding," the temporal hunter replied. "Where species retreat into isolation and mistrust, leading to conflicts that consume entire galactic clusters. We prefer the timeline where creatures like us are seen as partners rather than threats." Over the following weeks, the temporal hunters proved to be invaluable members of the community. Their ability to see multiple potential futures allowed them to serve as early warning systems for potential conflicts before they developed. They could identify situations where misunderstandings might lead to aggressive behavior and alert the mediation teams before problems escalated. Their presence also attracted attention from the galactic scientific community. Dr. Zephyra arrived from the original research facility, now serving as the consortium's director of applied xenopsychology. "The implications of what you've created here extend far beyond species conservation," she told Marcus during one of their regular consultation meetings. "You've demonstrated that intelligence and social cooperation can exist on scales we never imagined. The Stellar Devourers are sharing astronomical data with our research teams. The Quantum Hunters are helping us understand multidimensional physics. The Temporal Hunters are providing insights into causality and prediction theory. And most importantly," Marcus replied, "they're all happy. That's what matters most to me." Dr. Zephyr's expression grew serious. "There is one concern that the Council has raised. The success of this project has led to demands from across the galaxy for the release of contained apex predators. Some facilities are reporting pressure from their subject species to implement similar programs." "That's good news, isn't it?" Marcus asked. "It would be if we had enough humans to manage all these programs. Your species appears to have a unique gift for interspecies empathy, but there are only a few billion of you compared to trillions of individuals across hundreds of species in the consortium." Marcus had been expecting this conversation. Over the past months, requests for human-animal behaviorists have been flooding in from research facilities across the galaxy. Earth's universities were scrambling to expand their xenobiology programs to meet the demand. "Dr. Zephyra, I think you're missing the point," Marcus said. "The goal isn't to have humans manage every interspecies relationship in the galaxy. The goal is to teach other species how to apply these principles themselves." "What do you mean?" Marcus gestured toward the observation window, where a group of young Altarian researchers were learning to interact with a family of recently rescued energy wisps from the plasma fields of Beta Centauri. "Look at them," Marcus said. 6 months ago, those Altarian students were studying theoretical xenobiology in sterile classrooms. Now they're developing emotional bonds with creatures they once considered impossible to understand. The capacity for interspecies empathy isn't uniquely human. It just needs to be awakened and nurtured. As if to prove his point, one of the Altarian students successfully convinced a shy energy wisp to approach by offering it a specialized energy treat. The wisp's form sparkled with pleasure as it gently touched the student's hand with a tendril of living plasma. Dr. Zephyra watched in amazement. The Altarian nervous system isn't even compatible with plasma-based life forms. That interaction should be impossible. Impossible according to our old understanding, Marcus corrected. But when you approach another being with genuine curiosity and compassion, barriers that seem insurmountable often dissolve. The student isn't trying to study or contain the energy wisp. They're trying to be its friend. The success of the teaching programs had become one of Marcus's greatest achievements. Students from across the galaxy were learning not just the technical aspects of animal care, but the emotional intelligence necessary to form meaningful relationships with alien species. They studied human history, learning about Earth's long tradition of animal domestication and conservation. More importantly, they learned to see apex predators not as subjects to be controlled, but as individuals with their own needs, desires, and personalities. The morning staff meeting is starting, Dr. Wong announced through the communication system. We have some exciting news to share. Marcus made his way to the central conference room, where the station's leadership team gathered each day to coordinate activities across the various habitat zones. The team now included representatives from dozens of species, each bringing their own unique perspectives to the challenges of managing an interstellar zoo. The news from the Outer Rim territories is remarkable, Admiral Vex announced, his scales shifting to pleased color patterns. The Draconian Empire has formally requested assistance in establishing their own interspecies cooperation facility. They want to convert their largest military base into a conservation center. The Draconians? Dr. Reeves looked surprised. They've been the most resistant to the new protocols. Apparently, the success of our programs has convinced them that cooperation is more effective than conquest, Admiral Vex replied. They've offered to provide resources for expanding the program throughout their territory. Marcus felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond personal achievement. When he had first arrived at the original research facility as a nervous intern, he had just wanted to learn about alien life. He had never imagined that his simple approach of treating dangerous creatures with kindness would spark a galactic revolution in interspecies relations. There's more news, Dr. Wong added. The Stellar Devourers have made a formal proposal to the Galactic Council. They want to establish a network of protected star systems throughout the galaxy, places where all species can interact safely and learn from each other. Cosmic scale nature preserves, Marcus mused. I love it. The meeting continued with reports from across the galaxy. Former containment facilities were being converted into cooperation centers. Military academies were adding courses on interspecies psychology to their curricula. Most remarkably, several species that had been considered naturally aggressive were demonstrating the same capacity for gentleness and cooperation that Marcus had first observed in the Nightmare Weavers. As the meeting concluded, Marcus found himself standing once again at the observation deck, looking out at the incredible community that had grown around the station. Creatures that had once been feared as galactic-level threats were now playing together, learning from each other, and creating art that spanned star systems. Thinking about the old days, Dr. Reeves joined him at the viewport. I was thinking about my grandmother's farm, Marcus replied. She used to tell me that any animal could be gentle if you just took the time to understand what it needed. I never thought I'd be applying that lesson to creatures the size of planets. What do you think she would say if she could see this? Marcus smiled, watching as a young stellar devourer played a game of cosmic tag with several plasma WRMS, their movements creating aurora displays that painted the entire star system in brilliant colors. She'd probably ask if we were feeding them enough, he said. And then she'd want to know when we were bringing them home to meet the family. In the distance, the station's newest residents were arriving. A transport ship from the Andromeda Galaxy was bringing refugees from a species that had never encountered other forms of intelligent life. They would be frightened, confused, and potentially aggressive in their fear. But Marcus wasn't worried. He had learned that beneath every aggressive exterior was usually just a scared animal that wanted to be understood. Whether they were 6-inch house cats or 6,000-mile stellar devourers, the principles remained the same. Patience, kindness, and the willingness to see each creature as an individual worthy of respect and friendship. The galaxy's largest petting zoo was always ready to welcome new friends.